Welcome to Gerald Johan van Was and the educational channel dedicated to the books that I have out. And especially in reference to this book, The Sound Informed Methodical Synesthesia, which is also out in two separate volumes for those who want to go into the books and theory gradually. The first part is more the theory, and the second part is more the linguistic studies and other sources that have comparable theories, and I look for the origin of letters and the meaning of vowels and consonants and letters. It's out on Trafford Publications. You can find it there. Just look for the name Van Was. What is the book about? The Sound Informs. It's a new method of deliberately developed synesthesia. So not by association, by adding association, but by gradually developing my own organ of sensitivity, making it fit to an underlying natural order. The book is showing a whole range of possibilities, what you can do with it, and how you can interpret it. The videos there, especially in these series, which I have parts 1 and so on, I have kind of combined, but also separate method that is using a simplification of the theory. So in the same way, I think in a certain direction it's slightly different than the book, but actually it's good to have an extra comparison where the things are a bit resumed in this practice, which I show you here. And if you want to have more possibilities, okay, just check the book. But what is it about? It's about letters, its sounds, its way it is written, and all this combination already reveals the underlying meanings, and I translate them into a form, I change them into a form, and this shows me already the directions and meaning that is meant for these words. So the last couple of videos, they are hanging together, so this is part 6 of this series, and I continue the simplification. The simplification itself is important, because then you can recognize, then you can make the connections much more easily. The more it's simplified, the more it's easy to connect. But of course, to understand it, that's another matter, but you can already connect and understand the connection a little bit more easy with such a simplification. And I already had a lot of letters, so the ATK, OULB, CMX, all related with spatial references. The DNY, OEZ, WGFP were also already explained. And I explained them as actually as a very simple move towards a different focus. So this is also a kind of formation of a change, and this change of any changes that occur, of course you also need the aspect of time, which I didn't explain in full yet, but it doesn't matter for the moment. I might do this at the end. So the 3 parts already can predict where we are going to. From this point on, it is a bit difficult to predict it, because, okay, we know the 3 parts, they always return. Anything in the theory and in the underlying structure of nature, you always have this number 3, the trilogy, the 3 triangle, the 3 parts of the same thing. And because it's easy to have a formation like this, you always have a starting point, a center, then development of it, further development of it, and then you discover its limits. These are the 3 parts that always return in different ways, but this is basically what you have. So what will be the next part? We know that the second part is also revealing that there is a change going on. So there's a development to something else. And that's why there's a move, and it's a move forward. The first parts, they were very centered into the spatial, with the spatial reference, so within its own space. So they tend to repeat itself and not go much further to have a stagnant place, which I can count on. But if you really want to develop, okay, the other aspects, the other values are important as well. So there you really make a change and a development and a move forward. The next step will be, logically, is discovering the limits of this, what we can achieve by continue this change and this move forward. And we really have to make a true connection where we can change. And of course, return back to our known space. So the three parts, they always come back. It's a center part of thinking. It's a volume way of opening up, and it's the discovering the limits. So these three is a structure which always returns in my theory. So it's one of the theoretical things that you have to remember. And this center volume edge you can really add to all the series of the letters that are having an order in the order of the numerology of associated with Pythagoras, wherever it comes from. I don't know where it comes from, but I've discovered it in a very old book, and it seems to be practical to use this. So, and then if you want to extend these centers, these places, you can use the horizontal, plane, vertical, and diagonal. Don't have to use them all the time, but it's very practical to know these three parts. And where are the three parts, and where's the position within these three parts within the whole? So when enlarging, it's the horizontal, vertical, and diagonal plane that is used. But also the numbers can be practical, especially when dividing into different parts. So you don't need them all the time, but it can be useful to use 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And we came already to the 6th level, and now we're going over to the next one, the 7th level, which is a different world already, and I will tell you why. Because the first part, we know everything can be derived to a steady point in space. The second one is the development, the change. It can be derived to time, so it's a temporal change. The last parts of all the letters that fit there, they will connect space and time together. And it is in fact a kind of feedback system, because there you will find feedback, and you have the freedom of choice to do something with it or not, to make the connection or not, to change, to make the change or not, to reach the change or not, to have the conditions or not. The letters that fit there are Q, V and G. That's the first of the last series. And we will continue where we left off. So it is of course also the simplification, the practical simplification that I will continue, and it's easy that I continue from the same kind of thinking and go to somewhere else. So we ended our last series of knowing that there is a difference between our own centered point of thinking, and the second part is that there is something else, another place, and we try to reach that place. So we have found all ways to bridge the gap between two things that are different, that have a certain distance between each other. We found all the ways in the last three letters to bridge the gap. And we did that so well that in fact the bridging the gap can also be used as a tool. So in that way that we can even use the tool to bridge the gap between elements that are not even close to us. Here it's just the edges of that we can match an element with ourselves and the connection with ourselves that is close enough to make a match with the tool. But the advantages of using such a tool is that they can use it separately. So the tool can have measurements that are larger than oneself. So we can't grasp it maybe totally what you can do with, because we are smaller than the tool itself, but we can measure it, we can focus upon it. This tool is a reaching goal to reach the others. So that way we can reach objects that are too far away for direct match. The direct match will not be possible, but thanks to this tool, also a larger distance can be bridged with, and this is because of the extra focus that we have here, the tool of the focus. We can still make a match with them, a certain match with its limited usage. I will tell you what you can do with it. So we have here the usable tool. This is an example of it. Of course, you can also have a second part which is also moved away from us and almost getting out of our perspective, but it's still within reach, and thanks to this tool it is completely reachable. Even when it's further away there at the right, thanks to this tool, it is still reachable. And even quite complicated way further away from us, we can still reach it because we have the connection point of the tool, or the standards that we will use it to make the connection. And I'll make an example, because these three letters will fit to this kind of thinking. So the first starting point is here. We have two objects, and one of them is actually a bit too different and also out of reach as well. So even when you see it in front of you, it's a bit too far away, and it's even out of focus as well. So it really needs this tool as an intermediate. If we would try to reach it within our own limits, and then we can't reach it, and so not directly. So with our own measurements, it's impossible. And if you look in front, and we start from our own center, and we start from our center thinking and start to see what this is about, it's too far, it's out of reach, can hardly see from that viewpoint its edges. It has some slightly different edges, limits. It's a bit we recognize something. It is, we can just see this as two persons. You can see that this person has different limits. But I don't know what's in it. I don't know how to reach this person. I don't know what it is. So, but there are possibilities. With our own measurement, it's not possible. So if we look forward, we see only the different measurements a little bit, and to where this person is thinking, and then we notice this person or this object. So what do we use instead is this bridge. It is another tool. It has different measurements, and they match both our centers, and so we meet each other somewhere in the middle with this bridge, which has an entity of its own, and it's used to communicate our differences. So if we look straight forward, the center of this, an extra point that you should not forget. So we have a tool, we have something that the other one understands and we understand. So if you would use this tool as a means to communicate and say like, I understand these things, so you understand me. No, that is not possible. You cannot use the center itself as the new match. It is an intermediate. It's not the connection itself. It is an intermediate and key to use to bridge the things, but there has to be an interaction, and this interaction doesn't go from us to the other point, but it's from us to the intermediate, and from the intermediate to the other one. The idea that there is something that can be matched to both parties as we wish it, that's not the way to think about it. With it. It's a different way of thinking. use it as a tool, and I will explain you further how this works. So first of all, we have to recognize there are differences. So from the center point of view, the interpretation from the other viewpoint will measure it different than we do. So that's a recognition that you have to make from the starting point. What we could do eventually say, okay, we know more or less how much we are different and how much it is coming from a different viewpoint. Let's move to this different viewpoint and change ourselves and make it move so that we can have a match. Once you do that, okay, you can look the other one in the eye. You can see, okay, it's more or less the same kind of person with the same kind of possibilities and talents and whatever it is, but it doesn't make the match. It's too far away, and without using the whole concept of the bridging tool, we cannot see it. So it's best that we focus to the center point of the tool itself. Otherwise, okay, we lose the tool, and then again we don't connect, and we don't know how to connect. You don't need to change your own position. That's not really necessary. But you have to do there's something else. You don't have to change yourself to understand someone or something that is different, but you have to recalculate the direction to where you are looking at. So you only know a small part of it, you only see a small part of it, but because of the tool, you give the tool to the other one. So here I have something that you might understand. It's interpreted by the other person or the other opinion, and there's an interaction. That's the kind of communication that you have here. So all these reflections that occur here are not center-minded at all anymore, but it's a consciousness that is interconnecting, because they share the same position of the tool in between. And what letter fits better with this position than the first letter that we have in this series? And this is the Q. So I already told you that we don't have to change our position, but we have to adapt to the other one by waiting to, and we recalculate every time when we put something in the middle. It is measured by the reactions on this tool, nothing more than that. There's a common good in the middle, and this common good is interpreted. Q actually is also a word, but it's written a bit strange with the Q, U, E, U, E. But the idea in it is somewhat relevant here. The Q very often is with the U connected in words how it's written. It's also because there's a periodic waiting time before before it's finalized. So it is something on its way. You can't measure it as a complete interaction. There is a certain time that is needed to develop. Here the Q is you are waiting for your turn, and it's the other one's turn. So, and with two times this you know that you wait every time. You have to wait for your turn. So in that way it is like everybody will have the moment of its own saying. That's also the Q. The U as a letter, it's always about something that is forming itself, but it's still not complete. So what we do is, of course, adapt only to the center point of vision towards the other one, and then adapt to what are the interaction, how it is perceived. Another example of a word with a Q. There are not so many words. You have, of course, the example of Queen. It's an example that I explained in the tarot book as well. And the Queen has a certain function in the tarot game. It is it's someone who adapts her own vision. The queen, she adapts her own vision and checks with the population of if she can find a match. So also there she puts something to interpret, and she tries to interconnect, like, okay, how it is perceived, and shall I put something else in the middle so that there is a certain balance. That is the same thing which is happening with Q, and in this word Q. So from the center point of vision, it's a slight adaptation thanks to an intermediate. The second letter, so we already had a word, a position where there was a connection from something far away, but still within our vision, our center vision, reachable. Now here is an example of a position which is not within our center vision, but if you go to the sides of also of this tool, you can still see it. It is not within our direct view, so it's not adaptable from our center point of vision anymore, but it's still within reach of our material that we put into this new circle, into this intermediate. So it means that there is something available or reachable as a tool, as usable measurements or objects or material that can also be used by something or someone else or somewhere else. That's the next letter. The material here is reachable, the center point vision not anymore. So this material is that way common material. It's my material and it's the other point of view or other direction or whatever it can present. It's a shared position of material that you can see there in the middle. If you would directly look at the other viewpoint, you can't see very well how much material there is on the other one, how much material the other one has, let's say. We can't see a direct vision, can't measure it with it. It's not, because it simply is not compatible. It's too far away and we can't measure it. And the vague focus, if you would measure it, it is also comparable to another sound, is and is also, it's measuring something out, a little bit out of phase, a bit out of focus, and try to figure out what it is. But we'll talk about the G later, the tougher letter compared to, but and then you understand what I mean there. It's really something that is further away, but you still try to reach it. But here, the material is reached, and that is better to look at it from the center point of vision. So we have only material that is some common good, and it some parts will be ours, some parts will be shared, some parts will go somewhere else. Can I back this up with my theory that I had before, with a center, a middle? There's a structure that I use always as a checking point. And how can I back this up, that I have to see this from the viewpoint, because it's already quite complicated. Vision, I know what it is, I know what I understand it, and what I tell about it. You don't have to measure it exactly like that, but the content is exactly what you need. So why do you see this still from the center? And I will show you my scheme again to measure it, to use it as a tool, as a kind of mathematical tool to back my ideas up. So we know center, volume, H. Do you remember that? And all the numbers, and of course there are different regions. So we have the order of numbers, the Pythagoras numbers. So the first ones, so the center, volume, H, you can have them in all directions. So the center direction, the form direction, and the limits. So now we are the last series. They have to be about limits. So how far we can still find a match. That's the last part. It's all about that and about nothing else. The first part was about what is the first point of recognition, what's our first center. The second parts form were what is developing to something else. You can see it is recognizable. And in the three letters, the Q, the V and the G, the same three parts are there as well. You have the center part, the formation part of the volume part and the limits part. So now we are here in the formation part of the material part, the volume part. So this is about material. There you can recognize it already. So how do we translate it? It's still in the first degree from the three possibilities in the values of the limits. So it's the center starting or the starting point of the initial point to create this vision or this insight for where we can find. What do we have to find? We find first with the V, the volume or the material, and we show its limits of what we can see from the center point of vision of our limits. You see, you can analyze it by finding the position there. Okay, sorry, it's a bit more complicated this, but this structure helps you to understand and to fall back onto a theory to check, am I still doing it right? So the initial starting point for a vision. So that's the red dot there. So you start from the center point of a vision. You start from your own vision again. And what you look at the volume and you see how far does it reach. And here also, how far does it reach that I can also find it somewhere else. So also in the feedback process again. Here's a bit with colors. And the first word that fits to it with the V, okay, we have the Dutch word van. So I will start with that one, van. Okay, there's also the English word, but first start with the Dutch word van. Van means from, so or belonging to. So what are we doing here? Again, the same kind of vision. We select the material and we see in the feedback process what does belong to us and what does belong to somewhere else. Does belong to us together. So van or from is very recognizable. And N is, of course, you get you're finding or searching for the content that expresses this. Exactly that. But there's of course also the English word van. So what do you do with a van? Now, van. I know there are two kinds of vans. I'm not absolutely sure, but in Dutch we have the caravans, which is an attachment to something else, but the van here itself it's a bigger car, and what do you do with it? What is it? What do you use it for? To exchange material. So the material that's in it will have to go to somewhere else. So even there you can recognize it. It's a van. It's a larger area of material moving to another place. It is recognizable. And the last letter, it is the G. It is if we have connection points that are even further away, hardly connected, I can express it like this. So it's only at the edges that is still something there very far away and hardly reachable. It's not reachable easily, but thanks to our tool there still is a connection point. This connection point seems to be circumstantial as a kind of attachment or enlargement. It is you can interpret it this way. You can't look at it directly. There's no means to, or there's no norms to even to use it and to make a direct link to it. So it's impossible to find it this way. Also, you can't access any of the material of it, or swap any of the material. So we have to go even further. The position that we have here is actually dealing with something, an object, or whatever it is, an idea, a vision that is actually beyond of reach. the only thing you can notice from it is that there is a limit, and the limit exceeds the tools that we have. But it's there, it fits with it, fits at the edges of the tools, and it extends it a little bit. But from our own point of view, we cannot understand it. There is no way that we can grasp what it is really about. The only way, the only thing that we can understand is that if you would see the complete picture of the let's say environment and environmental associations and the whole range that we are measuring here, we know that this is a larger context and that we fit somewhere in this larger context. But unfortunately, we cannot look it directly into the eye, let's say, that we cannot look at it directly into the content because it's not within our reach. And also the material we cannot exchange deliberately from our with the tools that we have. It's impossible. The only know is we have one tool that we know, okay, we can extend the tool to a certain extent, but we really don't know what this will lead to. If we would really try to look at it directly, okay, we can still measure the object more or less, but it's as you can see, whatever you do, it fits with the G. The object will be out of focus, and it will even look larger as it is. And this larger as it is something, and is out of focus, and is focusing and trying to focus upon something. It all is related with the letter G. And it's a kind of measurement that is connected with the G that is returning a lot of times, and also in words and so on. It's one of the features that you will notice. Just because of this trying to reach it, it will have these features. So if we try to focus upon this larger measurement, it also will look wider or bigger. The bigger with the G, as you can see. The B, if I explain it, it is already broadening the center point of vision to something which is larger. The E will connect itself to something which is not reached yet, and we insert it with a new measurement. The G itself will be the reflection of our focus, and even a very limited focus, which is sometimes also a bit out of focus if we try if we try. And now I will also explain, just at the side of this event, what really happens in the G as we can see it from our center point of vision where we started from. So again, I have the measurements. So here I try to look at it, and we always see it as something bigger. But what really happens is that compared to our own measurements will also have a surrounding area which enlarges our possibilities. So the effect will be also that there is an enlargement around us of one's own limits, and mostly it's about an environment which gives a certain effect on us. An environment outside ourselves, it's larger than ourselves. We don't really grasp it yet, but just because of this, we also enlarge our possibilities unconsciously, because we don't fill it in. It is filled in automatically because the limits go beyond our normal possibilities, our own known possibilities. Examples of words that start with G, so that have the effect of G, is great. So great has this effect on us. God is also a reference point for a lot of people. That's why it is. I want to use this as well as a word. And the effect of it is also, we know it is something larger, we connect ourselves to something larger, beyond our own limits. If we do that correctly and we don't fill it in, because if you look at it, it only looks greater, but you don't know what it is, don't fill it in with rationality. Our own limits are too small. So just leave yourself as an entity in the smallness of your own being and interpretation, and see that the environment that represents it will also exceed its own limits. That's why certain temples have this effect, but also nature can have this effect because it exceeds the environment that is that we can grasp ourselves, that is what we know. It's larger than ourselves, and it has this effect, can have this effect as well. And there's this kind of transition of our own limitations, and it will become bigger as well. So it's not only the object itself will be bigger, out of reach, unknown, whatever it is, the effect of it is something that can be used. When it ends with a G, so it receives the effect, it is one of the features that will be shown mostly is, of course, that it shows itself as being bigger, larger, and in fact it's the same as saying it's larger than our focus, and that's why we can't focus on it so well. I hope you enjoyed these explanations. There were about 3 letters extra. There are not too many letters left to have the full new simplified theory that you can use and so on. I had a lot of other directions that I used. You can see the letters differently as well. There's other ways to build it up. I also build up certain ways of thinking, more monotone in a certain direction, and then I continued further. But I always showed a lot of features of all the letters in various ways. So you don't have to recognize all the details, but if you can sense more and more where the letters are, what is the reach, like in the last few letters, the main point, which is in all the interpretations, is the same. The main point, the essence is with these letters that there is a large distance between one object or another one and our object or our thinking and so on. There's about 2 measurements, and you need a tool to make the bridge. This tool is an intermediate, and thanks to this intermediate you can measure you can recognize certain aspects. These 3 aspects were in 3 letters, so that's how they fit and how they can be recognized in words as well, in the same way as I explained it. But I will explain it differently some other time, and maybe more simple in some other time. But this is about a theory. I developed the theory. Now you have just one idea of a development of the theory. You will not find that in the book in the exact way, but similar ways of thinking you will find there, and some aspects of it you will recognize as well. The books are out in 2 volumes as well, and these volumes have extra pages. Some of the extra pages are come from the YouTube videos, so that might be so one of the first from the first videos that I made that were very directly connected with the books. I added them in these books as well. Not much, but they will help also to guide you in these books. Anyhow, thanks for watching. This was Gerald Johan van Waas. There's a website where you can have the updates. You can subscribe to my YouTube channel if you like for more instructional videos. I hope to have 1 video each week. I hope I can do that. Anyhow, thanks for watching and for the interest, and I hope that someday you will be able to recognize the same things as I do. Thank you very much. Bye.